The detail of the pattern is movement.
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 The detail of the pattern
Of
is
the
movement.
pattern is
The detail of the pattern.
is movement.
The detail of the pattern 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 is movement.
4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The detail of the pattern is movement.
The detail of the pattern is movement.
The detail of the pattern
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
The detail of the pattern is movement.
The detail of the pattern is movement.
Raul Gomez.
Good afternoon. It is 4 p.m. on Wednesday, May 6, 2020, and it's time for another Metropolitan Youth Symphony virtual hangout. Welcome, everybody. I'm super excited. We have Carolyn Shaw standing by. She's our guest this afternoon. And I have just a few quick announcements. If this is the first time you have tuned into an MYS virtual hangout, welcome. It's great to have you. This is a space where we talk with amazing people about all kinds of things. Our primary audience are students, young musicians from the Metropolitan Youth Symphony in Portland, Oregon. But we find that these conversations are very interesting to everybody who wants to tune in. So we actually have MYS students, we have their families watching, we have friends, and people from around the world. So it's great to have you and welcome. This is the 6th week of Hangouts. And I was looking at the shows we've done so far, and I think this show we're starting right now is the 24th hour of Hangouts. We started as soon as we knew that we were not going to be able to hold rehearsals in person at MYS. We put these Hangouts in place, and it's been a lot of learning on my part about this whole live streaming thing. And also, we've had so many great conversations with artists and professionals from disciplines outside of the arts as well. I've learned a lot, and these people just inspire me, and they inspire our students as well. So speaking of the Metropolitan Youth Symphony, if you're an MYS student and you have not registered yet, go ahead and do it. Get it done. Go to the MYS website. You'll find a big button that says register. And all of our auditions are going to be via video for next season. You can register right away, get it done, and then you can send your audition videos between June 1st and August 14th. Okay? So as soon as this show is over, go get registered for next year. Also, many of you are not aware of this. We have merchandise on the MYS website. I actually got a hoodie that I cannot wait to get. And there are tote bags and other cool things. So there's the link, displaymys.org/shop. So go check it out. Get yourself some cool merch. And I have a short plug today. There's so many amazing performing arts organizations here in Portland, and one of them is the Amadeus Chamber Orchestra. The founder and music director is Adam Lamotte, who is also the conductor of one of our ensembles at the Metropolitan Youth Symphony. And every Wednesday at 7 p.m., Adam is hosting a concert series live streamed from his studio called Hum Day Concerts. And there is one tonight. So there it is up on the screen. And they're doing some Mahler, Brahms, and Smetana with a couple of special guests. So check it out, 7 p.m. Pacific. You can Google them, Amadeus Chamber Orchestra, or go to their website, which is amadeuspdx.org. So check it out. This is great. I look forward to these every Wednesday. They're always really, really, really good and fun and engaging, and Adam is great. So check them out. 7 p.m. Pacific tonight. Amadeus Chamber Orchestra Hum Day Concert. And let's go ahead and call Caroline. I know she's standing by. Let me pull up Skype. And we'll start chatting with her. And also, I want to encourage everybody to ask questions. This is a great chance to ask questions to one of the most brilliant and innovative minds in music right now in the world. So let's go ahead and call her in. She should be waiting, and as always, just crossing our fingers so that the internet gods are smiling upon us today. Hello, Caroline. How's it going? I am great. Let me put you up on the screen. And there, all right, let me make sure. I can hear you perfectly, but I just gotta make sure that we can see you. And there you are. Welcome to MYS Hangouts.
Hello. Nice to see everybody. I can't see anybody, but I know someone's there.
Yeah, well, it's great to have you. Thank you for taking the time to hang out with us.
Yeah, thanks.
And as always, we have a whole bunch of Metropolitan Youth Symphony students watching, and also their families at home. And we have folks on Facebook and YouTube who tune into this show. And we've all been looking forward to chatting with you. Are you in New York?
No, I usually live in New York, but right now I'm in Amherst, Massachusetts.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
And are you catching up on commissions? What have you been doing with your time of social isolation?
I've done a little writing, but actually for a long time I wasn't writing at all. I've spent a lot of time outside Kind of rediscovering the birds and the turtles and the buds popping on the trees. So that feels like what I've been doing the most. And writing a few songs here and there, little projects.
Is that something you get to do regularly? Like you go out and take walks and enjoy the outdoors?
No, I'm usually on the road traveling much of the year. And when I live in New York City, there's Central Park, but I don't get to be out in real unregulated nature very often. So I am lucky to get to do that now.
Nice. And here in Portland, the weather is getting nicer by the day, and I hope that you're also getting some good weather to go and take, a stroll and.
Yeah, yeah. On the
Very-
nice days, I'm out all the time, and then otherwise I stay inside.
Yeah, good. Well, you were here in Portland not long ago, actually. You were here with Roomful of Teeth, the eight-piece vocal ensemble with which you perform. And you guys were preparing a concert with the Oregon Symphony that included also Barrio Sinfonia. And will you share what happened that week?
That was that was my last rehearsal ever. So Roomful of Teeth was there, and we had one rehearsal with the orchestra, which is where I met you. And we were all set to do this crazy, beautiful piece by Barrio, along with beautiful visuals by Rose Bond. They were designed perfectly for the hall and for that piece. And then everyone quite suddenly, had to go home. And but I loved at least my time in Portland. I'd been there a week before with Third Angle.
Yeah, and it was so heartbreaking that week had just, it was just cut short. There were so many super exciting elements to that concert. I mean, there's of course the whole multimedia aspect of it, and the piece itself, Barrio Sinfonia, is just such an amazing piece. And on top of that, we, Portland, we're gonna hear you guys, Roomful of Teeth, perform your partita.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. So, but yes, we did get to see you with Third Angle the week before. And would you mind sharing about that project?
Sure. Third Angle's, of course, a wonderful organization, a group of people, and collective of musicians. And I wrote a new piece, a string quartet, for Third Angle and a few other groups called The Evergreen. And it's in 4 movements. It's a little bit different from some of my other work in that it's a little bit slower and more meditative. And I wrote it after visiting this beautiful evergreen forest in the west coast of Canada.
Nice.
And other parts of the concert, I played and sang a little bit here and there too.
Yeah, and a recent guest of the MYS Hangouts, Emily Cole, performed that concert.
Yeah,
So
she did.
She and James were guests together last week.
That's great.
And by the way, Charles and Stephanie Noble say hi in the comments.
Oh, that's hello. I see your updates about your garden. It looks all kinds of nice things.
Yeah. And look, Caroline, before we get into all kinds of questions that I have for you, and I'm sure our viewers do, let's play the little game that we play on the show, Two Truths and a Lie. So let's go ahead and jump to that. I'm going to change the screen here. And the way this works, if you, for those viewers who are joining us for the first time ever, is this. Caroline sent 3 statements. 2 of them are true statements. 1 of them is a lie. And your job is to vote on the comments for which of these statements you believe is a lie. So, Caroline, are you ready to share statement A with us?
Statement A, yes. I believe statement A is my favorite kind of pizza is anchovy pineapple.
Okay, that's A, and it's up on the screen. Let's hear statement B.
The statement B is my great-great-grandfather was a Siamese twin.
Okay, up on the screen as well, and let's hear the final statement.
I have had lunch with Kim Kardashian.
Okay, so those are all up on the screen. So if you're watching, go ahead and vote A, B, or C for which of these statements you believe is a lie. And while people do this, Caroline, let's go back in time to a little, maybe 3, 4, 5-year-old Caroline Shaw who was starting to maybe learn to play the violin? How were your beginnings in music?
Yeah, I was actually about 2 years old when I first held it was like a 64th size violin. You think they don't make them that small, but they do.
I think those are actually keychains.
Keychain, yeah. Yeah, take a little keychain. The world's tiniest violin.
Right, right.
And I grew up in Greenville, North Carolina, and my mom was a Suzuki violin teacher, so she taught classes of 3 and 4-year-olds. So I started pretty early. And violin was something that I always did. I didn't really choose, and then I really fell in love with it when I started playing with friends, as you all do. I didn't really understand the point until I started playing chamber music and just with other people.
Did you play with a youth orchestra growing up, or was it mostly chamber and informal?
Yeah, it was a small chamber youth orchestra. Nothing like what you have. I think there were 20 people total, but a lot of chamber music. Yeah,
And this was in Greenville.
in Greenville. Yeah,
Yeah. And were you also singing when you were little?
I sang in a church choir growing up. Simple stuff. Always in a choir, never by myself. Yeah, but violin was more of what I thought I did. Yeah.
And when did the creative bug started to appear? When did you start creating music?
Well, in a way, I think we're all incredibly creative when we're kids, and we somehow, somewhere along the way, things change our expectations and what we choose to kind of get into. But like I'm sure everybody else, made up little songs, and then I had those cassette tapes about stories of the composers, and I thought, well, why don't I try to write something down? So I was probably 9 or 10 when I tried to do that. And then I didn't really write music for a while until after college, but I had been kind of, playing around with things when I was younger.
And so when you first started, 10 or 11, was that actually like putting like pencil to paper and writing music like by hand for your violin or what? Was it ensembles?
Yeah, I think it was something for, I was 10 or maybe 10 or 11. It was like a violin, viola, and I had those like big bubbly notes with my pencil, like giant note paper, and I didn't have a key signature. I didn't know what that was, but I had some idea of like how things go.
Do you have those anywhere? Are those
I'm sure my mom has that somewhere. Yeah.
have you like looked at them since? That'd be really cool to go like dig those things out.
Oh yeah, I haven't looked at them. One day I'll go back and look at it.
Maybe get some ideas for your next piece.
Yeah, and there might have been some gold right
Right.
there. And, yeah.
And okay, so you grew up playing the violin and singing in church and writing some music. Did you know when you were in your teenage years that you were going to dedicate your life to music, that you were going to be a musician professionally?
Yeah, I didn't quite know what that looked like, what being a musician looked like, but started to get really serious about it and like fell in love with music when I was about 15, I think, 14 or 15. And I went to this music camp in Vermont called Kinhaven, and I played a trio by Clara Schumann. I was at violin, and I just sort of realized that it meant an incredible amount to me. It was all I wanted to do, and it was also kind of how I identified myself in high school. Yeah, and then I started looking at, okay, where do you go to school? What do you do? And this was really before like the real internet. So I just had brochures and would talk to friends, and found out about Rice University and this teacher Kathy Winkler, and read all about the school, and I had this good combination of things. So that's where I ended up going.
And at Rice, you studied with Miss Winkler?
Yeah.
My very, very good friend, childhood friend, Eva Liebhaber, studied with her at Rice, but I don't know what years. I wonder if you guys were there at the same time.
Oh, cool.
I guess
I don't recognize
doesn't
the name.
sound familiar. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And while at Rice, were you there as a violin major for undergrad?
Yeah, I was a violin major. I loved the orchestra, played in quartets, Bartok 4, Beethoven 130. And then but I was always interested in a lot of other things, and I would try to kind of do them secretly without the music school finding out. So I sang in an a cappella group on campus. I did like a Gilbert and Sullivan show, and took classes in philosophy and architecture, but I was there for violin. But it was kind of, it's one of those things from, people who are in the orchestra now, you guys, if you're thinking about college, it's hard to know exactly what you want to do at that time. So I went to a place where I could explore a lot of things, and, had ups and downs with my confidence level, but also in the meantime, really wanted to be writing music, but wasn't quite sure what exactly contemporary music was or what it was supposed to be. The music that I really knew was everything before 1900, and but started kind of trying out things, writing stuff for a string quartet. And what I really loved about writing music then in college was that it made me listen better in rehearsal. So I would like be, trying something out, and then I'd go to orchestra rehearsal, and my ears were like this, because I had just been thinking about all these decisions, and you start to notice all the composer's very specific decisions. So I think that was the best gift that writing music gave to me, was like a deeper way of listening.
And so at Rise specifically, what do you think that you found there that is perhaps unique to Rise and you perhaps can't find in other schools or conservatories?
There's, I think, two things. One is that there's a pairing of the conservatory with the university, so you have really the best of both worlds. And then the orchestra is so amazing. I remember, I think my very first concert there was Bartok Concerto for Orchestra when I was a freshman, and my last concert was maybe Brahms 4. And I thought, this is like the peak. This is my peak orchestra experience, and I still feel like that might have been my favorite. But yeah.
Let me share something with you. When I was in Aspen in 2011, my absolute favorite concert that whole summer in Aspen, and actually I would say one of my favorite concerts ever, was Larry Ratcliffe conducting the Aspen Festival Orchestra doing Beethoven 6.
Oh,
It was just magical, and just the way that I mean, it's a very difficult piece to do well, I think, Beethoven 6 Symphony, and he just got this life from the music, and everything was magical. And there was a moment when the flute has this solo, it's like birds, that actual birds also started to like chirp, and it was just, it was ridiculous. It was so good, and it was so beautiful and uplifting, and to this day that's just one of my favorite performances. And I guess you got to spend quite a bit of time with Mr. Ratcliffe at Rice.
yeah, feel very fortunate. I feel like he taught me many things, not just about music and orchestral playing, but about like being a person in the world. And he just instilled in all of us this dedication to practicing and honesty in playing, which is like I carry with me to this day. It's this idea of, he would joke, he would say, faking is the beginning of the end of your life. And I thought, I never forgot that, because it holds true not just in orchestra.
Yeah, yeah. And so you were there for 4 years, and what was your next step after that?
Right after Rice, I got this fellowship called a Watson Fellowship, where you go for a year outside your home country and do a project that's not a particular job, it's not a school, it's something you've designed. And I spent a bunch of time looking at different styles of gardens in Europe, and then just thinking about aesthetics and design and architecture and the relationship of music and nature, order and chaos, and writing weird music. And then I went to Yale for a master's in violin. But that was the beginning of my transition from violin to other things. Yeah.
And that happened gradually over the course of the time you were in at Yale?
Yeah, it was a 2-year program, and I realized that I was a lot less interested in practicing my violin than I was in writing music and singing. And I started singing in a lot of paid choirs as to make extra money, but that slowly sort of became more of what I was doing, and I would gig a little bit as a violinist. And then I started playing in New Haven and in Connecticut for dance classes, ballet and modern dance. And I did that for 3 years after, 3 years after grad school in New York. I was playing for ballet and modern dance classes. And so as a violinist, or I bring viola or sometimes play piano, you're improvising with the dancers. So they have a certain combination, a certain tempo, a certain phrase, and you have to make music that fits with that in real time, but that doesn't get in the way and that sits in the right tempo and shows the harmony and the melody. So I had this whole like deep experience thinking about solo Bach and what he does. He's with one instrument is kind of creating all those things. So basically right around then I started writing a lot more music, really just for myself and for friends. Yeah.
So, MYS students, you hear that? Collaboration with other art forms can be so valuable and such a great just learning experience. It's gonna expand your horizons. And
Yeah, all art forms. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, we talk about this in rehearsals often, how like everything that you do as a young musician can contribute to your growth, your artistic growth, and even things that are not necessarily directly related to the arts. You know, when you learn about literature, you learn about history, there's so many things that will help you grow as an artist. And certainly, I mean, as it was in your case, collaborating with other art disciplines brought you learning and inspiration, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And so you never really had, until this point, it sounds like a composition teacher or a formal mentor. Is that correct?
Yeah, I didn't, but I feel like I learned so much by playing a lot of new music. So I was always kind of, if there was a composer at school who had written something, I'd usually volunteer to play it. And so I played a ton of new music in school and then was doing a lot of that after school. And I think that's really one of the best composition teachers is to kind of experience the music that way as a player or as a singer, where you see the score, you see kind of what worked and what didn't, what could have been different. And I started in my mind in rehearsals, where you have sometimes time off in rehearsals where you're not needed. And of course the temptation is just to kind of space out, but there's always something to pay attention to, which is another conductor taught me that. If you keep paying attention always in rehearsal, there's always something interesting and there's always something to learn, even if it's not directly related to what you're doing. So, and then, after a couple of years living in New York, I decided to maybe do composition a little bit more seriously and applied to Princeton. And so I was at Princeton for a few years too.
Okay. And you, Caroline, have something in common with Charles Ives, Wynton Marsalis, and Kendrick Lamar. Will you share with our viewers what that is?
I believe, really, Kendrick Lamar is the one that tipped me off to it, is the Pulitzer Prize in Music.
In 2013.
In 2013.
Youngest ever recipient of the prize. And this happened, if I'm not mistaken, while you were at Princeton.
Yeah, I was in my third year at Princeton. I had actually used part of that piece to apply to school.
Oh, cool. Okay.
The last movement of Partita is called Passacaglia, and that was one of my two pieces because that's all I had to submit really to grad school, and then I finished the rest of it over the next year or two.
And then you said, "Hey, I'm gonna submit this to be considered for the Pulitzer Prize." And or how does that even work?
So bold! I can't believe I did that. I was like, what did I know? This is how you send it in. Okay. No, I did. So I was singing with this group, Roomful of Teeth, which had just started in 2009 as really just a workshop. We weren't really meant to, I don't think anyone thought that it would become what it's become. It was really just a 3-week workshop of learning different ways of singing and different ways of using the voice. And so from those experiments, I started constructing these movements, which became Partita for 8 Voices.
Which we
And,
would have.
and I sent this thing in thinking like maybe this group can get some more concerts, or this piece can get known. Somebody on this committee is going to like listen to it. Otherwise, no one will hire us, and no one knows about this piece that I wrote, which I'm pretty proud of. So it was $50, which was half the cost of applying to even one graduate school, which also tells you how expensive grad school is.
And those were $50 well spent, I would say.
It was the best. That was a very well spent $50. Yes.
And then what happens? Do they keep you posted? Like your work has progressed to the next phase, or like did you just suddenly one day find out?
No, you don't know anything. I didn't even know when, and they don't send you they don't call you beforehand. So I just kind of one day suddenly got a lot of phone calls. I got a call from a friend right away. He like checked it online. I guess he checks this every year. And he called me, and then I got like, suddenly like, why is everyone calling my telephone? And it was a surprise to most people. There are a lot of people who didn't know that I wrote music, and I didn't have very much out there. And I honestly hadn't written that much music down. I'd done a lot of dance improv, and a few pieces here and there. So in the last 7 years, I've started writing a lot more, and have grown quite a bit too.
Well, speaking of that, my friend and associate conductor at the Kansas City Symphony, Jason Sieber, is watching, and he asks, will you write more for orchestra, please? We would all love that.
Oh, that's so kind. Thank you, Jason.
So I second that.
Okay. Well, I am set to write a piece for next year. I mean, next year. For New York Phil and Roomful of Teeth together. So it's kind of, and there's, you have this relationship to the Barrio Sinfonia, which is also a piece for orchestra and 8 singers amplified, or 7 singers. So that's my next thing for orchestra. It's hard, there's so much engineering that is involved in writing for orchestra. It's quite different. And not just the process of writing, but thinking about players is really different than writing for a string quartet, where everyone's on their own part A and they're communicating in a different way. So it's a challenge that I have liked, but I don't do it very often.
When you were here working with Third Angle, Sarah Tiedemann posted a photo of you, I think at a FedEx office, making changes to the piece. I think that's so cool, you were working sort of like in real time, and you're working so closely with the players, and of course yourself being a string player as well, to have that ability to shape a work right before performing it. And I guess that's something that you will not necessarily have when you're writing something for full orchestra or a commission for the New York Phil.
Yeah, no, you don't shape that in rehearsal. You everything has to be, for orchestra pieces, everything is very carefully scripted and sent in 2 months before. Yeah. But for that Third Angle piece, I was in that Office Depot every day printing new parts. But I'm hugely grateful to the musicians, because it takes players that you have a trusting relationship with to be able to work that way, where I could bring in something that's a little bit, we would sort of change it in rehearsal, and then I would take down those notes and make us new parts for them that have all the information.
Yeah.
It was really fun. I loved working that way. Yeah.
And let's talk about chamber music here, because you sent me a link to a video that we're going to share with our viewers in just a minute. And this is a piece of chamber music that you wrote, and you're performing on this video with the Attacca Quartet. So will you tell us about that partnership and collaboration, and then we'll transition into the video?
Sure. I love the Attacca Quartet so much. I get to work with a lot of quartets that I love, but Attacca, I think we've we've really grown together. We have painting parties. We like hang out as people, which is really fun. And they're just amazing players because I love how they take even older music. They'll take, middle Beethoven quartet and rip into it and play it like it's right now, and they're not precious about everything. They really make it their own. So a few years ago, they had this idea to record all of my music for a string quartet, which we did, and then we made this album, which I really wanted to call Orange, and luckily we were able to do that. Anyway, it's really nice to work with them over a long period of time. So this piece that you're going to see it's a song called And So, which is actually originally written for a Baroque orchestra, Philharmonia Baroque. So it's an orchestra piece for another singer, a wonderful Swedish mezzo-soprano named Ann-Sophie von Otter. And then I made a string quartet arrangement and tried to sing it myself. And really what you're seeing in this video is the first time I had never performed it publicly. We just decided to make this video. So, and the text it's mine, but it riffs on Gertrude Stein and Shakespeare and Robert Frost and Billy Joel.
Awesome. So let's go ahead and watch that. It's about 5 minutes long or so, I believe.
Yeah.
And then I will ask you more questions.
Okay, cool.
All right, here we go. This is And So by Carlin Shaw, performed by the Attacca Quartet and Carlin Shaw.
Would a song by any other name sound as sweet and true? Would all the reds be just the same, or violets as blue? If you were gone, would words still flow, and would they rhyme with you? If you were gone, would I still know how to love and how to grow and how the vow threads through? And so you say the saying goes, a rose is a rose, 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 is a tired rhyme. But in the verse there's always time. Would scansion cease to mark the beats? If I went away, would a syllable interrupt the feet of tetrametric iambs when I am gone? Listen, and I will sing a tune of love and life and of the ocean's prose and the poetry of a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. And so you say the saying goes, a rose is a rose, 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 is how I'm keeping track of time. rocks melt with the sun? Will the memory of us still rhyme with anyone? Will we still tune our violins? Will we still sing of roses? Will we exist at all, my love? Or will we fade to stanzas of the dust that I suppose is all we were and all we'll be? And so the saying, so it goes, depends a lot on if a rose is a rose, 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 is a thing sublime. And so we stay on borrowed time.
Put your emoji hands together for the Attacker Quartet and Carolyn Shaw. So let me go back to this screen and let me make sure that you can see me again. Okay, I think we're back. Are you there?
Cool.
Okay, yes.
I'm here. Yeah.
I love that piece so much. And,
Thank you.
And you're getting an emoji applause explosion on Facebook and YouTube. Such a cool piece, and it's easy to see. I think the chemistry of the group and you, the five of you performing this. When was this recorded?
I think we made that last fall. Yeah.
Yeah. You know what? Also, watching that just now made me realize how much I miss playing with people.
I know. I miss it so much.
Yeah. But, I'm thankful that we at least have, platforms and, the internet now that to at least, stay connected. And even though we're not playing live, in the same room with people, folks are finding ways to make music together, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, and we will make music together again. We will do it again.
Yes.
Just not tomorrow.
Yes. Hopefully soon. Let me ask you something. I read on your bio that you have an upcoming commission, or maybe it's already done, with A Far Cry. And one of our guests next week is Robin Bollinger from A Far Cry.
Oh, yeah.
So is this something that's already happened, or is it in the works?
I think that's already happened, unless there's something that I don't know about, which sometimes happens. I've done a couple things with A Far Cry. There was a piece I wrote for A Far Cry, which is usually is Strings, this wonderful democratic group based in Boston, and Roomful of Teeth. So it was a piece for strings and voices.
Cool.
And it was really fun to work with them. Yeah.
We have at the Metropolitan Youth Symphony a wonderful relationship with A Far Cry, and every year, generally 4 of them come out and they work with our students, and we do a concert together.
Oh, that's great! They're so wonderful. Do you remember which Far Cry members have come out?
Oh yeah, they rotate, but
Yeah.
ones that have come several times: Jason Fisher, Alex Fortes. Jay,
yeah.
yeah. Also, Liesel was here last year, and several others, And we always look forward to this. Our most advanced string ensemble is actually modeled after A Far Cry, and they are a self-conducted string ensemble. They're called Misfits, MYS Fits.
That is so cool. I'm really jealous of all of you. What an amazing program. That's really cool. It's so different to perform with a conductor and without, because you just communicate in a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, and you listen better, and there's a lot more ownership of the music because you're effectively conducting it along with your, colleagues in the ensemble. And every year they come and they work with the group, and it's a far cry. Whenever they come here, they just inject energy and joy into what we do. So I was excited when I read that you've worked with them, and also Robin is going to be on this show next week too. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, Robin's great. I used to play in a quartet with Alex Fortes.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Cool. He's great too. I actually met him playing in a string quartet with him in New Orleans at the Birdfoot Festival.
Oh, Birdfoot Festival. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Small world. Okay, so I want to shift gears here a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And on your website, on your bio, you describe yourself as a musician, parenthesis, vocalist, violinist, composer, and producer. And I find that very often classical musicians and young musicians in general don't really quite understand what being a producer really means. So I was hoping if you would share about that aspect of your work.
Sure. I added producer on sort of more recently. I myself didn't know what producer meant. I sort of knew what composer meant, but I've always had a strange relationship with the term composer already. I just think of what I do as being a musician. Sometimes I'm playing something, sometimes I'm singing, writing music, improvising. It's all part of one thing. And another realm of my music creation is a lot more with the laptop and collaborating with other artists in pop and hip hop music. And that's what most people would call being a producer. So it can be something where you're collaborating with someone to help shape the sound of a song, shape a track, add maybe instrumentals or vocals, or write new hooks, new chords. Any of those things kind of is part of being a producer. And that's also a word that you'll see in a theater producer is one thing, a sort of project producer. But I like to think of it as someone who is creating a part of the whole in collaboration with others. And so I work in Logic, in my Mac. It's my DAW. That's my digital audio workface. And I use that to basically create new tracks. Sometimes I'm layering vocals. Sometimes I'm playing with synth sounds or samples or digital, like sort of samples of old pianos. I really love that. And I've collaborated with a few different people. I'd love to do more, but it's a very big contrast from writing an orchestra piece, for instance, or writing a string quartet. But it's still a very cool kind of composition.
Yeah, and I want to ask you more about some of those collaborations, but before we do that, I think it's time to reveal your truths and lie.
Oh.
So let's go back to those, and they're up on the screen, and let me just take a quick look at the voting so far. And folks, if you have not voted yet, you still have time. So there are 3 statements up on the screen. One of them is a lie, and your role here is to vote on the comments for which of these statements you believe is a lie. And I'm just going to read them out loud to give folks a few more seconds if they have not voted. Statement A, Caroline's favorite kind of pizza is anchovy pineapple. Statement B, Caroline's great-great-grandfather was a Siamese twin. Statement C, Caroline has had lunch with Kim Kardashian. Okay, so let's look at the votes. I see a few A's. I think we're trending A. Okay. Why don't we go ahead? I see a couple of B's. Let's reveal one of your truths, Caroline.
One of my truths is I have had lunch with Kim Kardashian.
Okay.
There are other people at lunch too, but
oh, okay. You know, it when you read that, it sounds pretty far-fetched, but it's true. And, you know, something that has something to do with that, I'm sure, is one of your artistic collaborations that I want to ask you about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to change that here on the screen to, I'm going to write here, true. Okay? So folks who voted C, you were wrong, but you can change your vote now. So we're down to two, anchovy pineapple pizza or Siamese twin. So Caroline, will you reveal your final truth, please?
Well, I hate anchovies and the concept, but I do like the concept of like a salty thing and a sweet thing. So like I could maybe one day like anchovy pineapple pizza, but that sounds gross. And my great great grandfather is Chang Bunker, who immigrated from Thailand in the 1840s to North Carolina.
So Siamese twin is true,
Yeah.
and anchovy pineapple pizza is false. And you know, I don't think I'm even like adventurous enough to try anchovy pineapple pizza. That combination sounds just too bizarre to me.
It does, but then you think about maybe you'd have like salmon with like a mango something on top of it. Like that sounds nice. Or like
Sure.
prosciutto and melon. That's a weird combination. I don't know. I feel like maybe I could try it.
Okay, so look, let's talk about not about Kim Kardashian, but let's talk about Kanye. And let me share with you first that a few years ago, I stumbled upon on YouTube a song and a music video by Dirty Projectors, David Longstreth. And this is a band that I didn't know about. And I found this song and I just became obsessed with it. And I just started listening to it over and over again. And then I got through all of Dirty Projectors' discography. And then I found out that David, the lead creative mind of the Dirty Projectors, has collaborated with Kanye West. And that led me to, listening to a lot of Kanye, which I had in the past, just kind of casually, like it's on the radio or, it's on the internet. But I kind of just like listened through, most of his discography, and I really, really got into his music.
Yeah.
And then I learned that you have worked with him, which I think is so cool. So will you first please share how that came about? How did you even connect with him?
Sure. In about 5 years ago, Roomful of Teeth, we sang in Los Angeles at Disney Hall, and we sang Partita for Eight Voices, the piece that I had written. And Kanye had been there with a friend of his, Vanessa Beecroft, at the concert, because the second half was this big Philip Glass double piano concerto premiere. So I think they were there for that, but we were on the first half. And at intermission, he came backstage, and I honestly I didn't really know a ton of his music. So he was asking to talk to me backstage, and he said hello. He showed me this game on his phone, which was about his mother who died about 10 years ago. And we exchanged phone numbers. And I was kind of like, he just is at that time, he's just a very shy kind of artist who's like trying to show me this thing he's working on. So I didn't honestly realize at that point how big he was. Like he's big, but it's kind of epic. So over the next few years, we worked together on a couple of different albums and music, and I liked it because he thinks about music in a way that was different from how I had kind of grown up thinking about it. It's very much about immediacy and whether or not you like something initially and how the sound hits you, and then he combines things in unusual ways, which is kind of interesting.
So, first of all, that's so like surreal to think about. Here's Kanye West just, exchanging phone numbers with you backstage. And how did the specific work that you guys did together come about? Did he like pitch an idea, or how did that happen?
Yeah, one of his producers and sound engineers that he was working with a lot, I was assisting him, they were putting together a live show of 808s and Heartbreak in the Hollywood Bowl in the fall, and the producer just reached out and said, hey, Connie wants to know if we're going to do an orchestra version of this. Are there any of the songs that you want to, like, what do you think? It was no decide. It was just sort of like, could you, if there's an orchestra, what would you do? And for like 2 weeks, I didn't really send them anything back. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I thought, I don't really want to do an orchestra arrangement of a pop song. Like, anybody can do that. There are hundreds of people in the United States who can do that. So I made this, I just went to a friend of mine and said, I want to make a vocal version of this that feels like the other stuff that I write. So I recorded myself and layered and tried to make this wall of sound for a song called Say You Will. And then he kind of fell in love with that. And then we started working together over the next few years.
What's something that you would think most classical musicians don't know about Kanye's process or work that you know was striking to you or that you found compelling?
Yeah. You know, he brings a lot of people into the room. All kinds of opinions, all kinds of artists. So whenever he's working or starting to work on and always thinking about something new or a new project, he just kind of invites a lot of people to the table, which I think is really interesting. And he multitasks a lot when he's working on music, which is kind of why, for instance, the album from 2016, Life of Pablo, sounds the way it does. It's almost like it goes here and it goes there and it goes here, which I could see in the studio. That's how he works. So he'll have like a Disney film on the screen. He'll be texting with an artist about something. Someone will show him a screen full of like possible album covers, and then he'll check in with the guy doing the drums, and he'll check in with me about vocals, and it's just kind of an interesting workshop. So there, you know, you hear a Kanye West song, there are so many different people that are part of that process and song, and he ultimately kind of curates what he wants. And I think he, you know, has the mental health issues that he's dealing with. We separated ways because I'm just can't get on board.
Sure.
But the time working with him, I found I grew a lot. Yeah.
Well, what are you listening to these days? Is there any music or band or artists that you're like into?
You know, when I'm writing music, I don't listen to a lot of music, which is most of the time. When I do go to listen to music, the old stuff, it's always solo Bach. I love like Glenn Gould Bach. I'll go to that. That's like a always kind of thing. And then there's some bands, Tune Yards I love. There's an amazing artist, FKA Twigs, who I think is really interesting. Yeah. What do you listen to? What are you listening to right now?
Oh, you know what? I've been listening to Fiona Apple's new album.
I haven't. So I'm basically a diehard, deep Fiona Apple fan, and I'm like waiting for the right day to listen to the album, but I haven't done it yet. But I've heard it's great.
Listen to the whole thing in one. Or, I was going to say in one sitting, but maybe actually like go for a walk or something.
Yeah, that's my plan, is to like really set some time and say, I'm going through this by myself.
Like good headphones. I think it's such an amazing album. Yeah. And speaking of Fiona Apple and Kanye,
they share one thing in common. Do you know?
I think I do. They got a 10 out of 10 review on Pitchfork for their Fiona for her latest album, and Kanye for my beautiful dark twisted fantasy. Is that what you're?
Yeah.
So
they're both. I mean, Fiona Apple is such a good musician, beautiful singer. Such phrasing. I just grew up talking about like old violinists. You think about the vibrato and their phrasing and how they like shape something. You listen to her sing, and some of also the great singers, Nina Simone, people who like curl a phrase just right. It's stunning. But I've also always loved her lyrics and her harmonies and her whole vibe. So I'm so excited that this is like a quarantine treat that I'm holding out for myself, because there isn't a lot. It's the one day I get to listen to the Fiona Apple album.
It's so good, and just the speaking about production, this production where the way the
Yeah.
tracks are just crafted is so compelling and so creative and so refreshing, and it sort of defies. I like if you ask me to put it in a box, I can't. It's so rich. So that's one of the things, I guess.
Well, my favorite track of hers still, I think, is the last track of the previous album, which is Hot Knife.
Okay.
Best song. Yeah, cool.
Well, I maybe we'll check in after you listen to Fetch the Bolt Cutters, the album, and see. It's so good.
Love it.
I'm so excited for you.
Me too.
Okay, so suddenly we have only 4 minutes left. So let's go into just a couple of our short little fun segments that we do as we get ready to wrap. The first one is a segment we call "What Are You Into?" So when you're not singing, playing, writing music, or producing music, what are you into?
What am I into? Well, these days I'm really into birds and turtles, as we've discussed. Normally, I've also gotten really into, so I like certain video and audio editing software. So I've been learning a ton more about Adobe Premiere and After Effects and Illustrator, which are tools that I've used in the past, but really diving in and figuring them out. And I encourage everybody to, you can figure these things out. There are a million YouTube tutorials, but it's really fun to be able to have the tools to make what you want. I am reading a book right now very slowly. I'm a very slow reader, but it is the most beautiful book. It's called The Overstory by Richard Powers.
Okay.
It just talks, it's about families and trees and people, but time. And then when there's March I would have been watching a ton of college basketball in March, but that's over. I grew up as a big Duke basketball fan.
Uh-huh. Do you follow basketball in general or just college?
It was always just college basketball, but I think I'm going to start getting into pro basketball. I'm not sure which team I'm going to go for. But
Okay.
yeah.
Well, if you need something to watch, I've been watching the Michael Jordan Chicago Bulls documentary on ESPN, and it's 10 episodes. They're 5 and 6 just dropped on Sunday, so that's good. That's some good. If you're missing sports, that's a good thing to watch right now.
Oh, he's really amazing. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And then let's go right into the next segment, and this is one of my favorites because I get to ask you in our segment Sound Advice if you could go back in time and find, say, 15-year-old Caroline Shaw in Greenville, North Carolina, what advice would you have for your past self? And in order to hear your answer, you'll see this later on the screen. I have put you in front of a Metropolitan Youth Symphony commencement speech podium as you give your sound advice.
Well, there's some things I feel like, you can't have any regrets about. But some things that I wish I had known then that I now know. One is don't be afraid, it's just music, which is some advice that someone gave me in college that I really needed to hear then. And I wish 15-year-old me knew that. Don't be afraid, it's just music. And the other one is very practical. Please, Caroline, floss your teeth. Really, I have regrets about that, floss your teeth.
And that is sound advice. Caroline, thank you. Oh, and one more thing. I almost forgot. Our final segment is the plug. So if there's anything that you would like to plug or share with our viewers to check out online or to pay attention to, this is the time for that.
I'll plug something that we don't have a release date for it, but it's an album that I made of songs with a group called So Percussion, which is a percussion quartet. And it's all recorded. We feel super excited about it. And we were going to do these concerts and then they're canceled. So we don't know what's going to happen with it. But one day it'll come out and I hope you check it out.
And how can we stay informed? Social media, or what's the best
Yeah,
way?
social media. I do mostly Instagram. I've kind of gotten off social media just right when the quarantine started. I'll come back on. Instagram is Caroline Adelaide Shaw, I think. Twitter is Caro Shaw Music. Mostly it's Instagram. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
we'll be checking that out and looking forward to that album with Soul Percussion. And Caroline, thank you so much for spending time with us. You've been such an amazing guest and so generous with your time and your stories and your advice. And on
You're an
behalf,
awesome host. Thank you
oh,
so much. I love how you set it all up too. It's
well,
great.
thank you. Thank you. On behalf of all students of the Metropolitan Youth Symphony and myself, thank you, Caroline Shaw, and we look forward to seeing you in person, hopefully here in Portland, whenever you're back in town.
Cool. Me too. See you soon.
Okay, take care. Thank
Bye.
you. And okay, that's our show, you guys. What a tremendously inspiring artist, Caroline Shaw. Thank you again, Caroline, for spending time with us. And you guys, check out our upcoming shows on the screen right now. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific. Okay, it's a different time from our usual time. Two amazing musicians from the Oregon Symphony are going to join me, Marilyn de Oliveira and Trevor Fitzpatrick, both cellists. They're also married and they have 2 kids. And they're awesome. They're good friends. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Friday, 4 p.m., Suzanne Nance, the president and CEO of Old Classical Portland, is going to be on the show. Then going right into next week, Tuesday, May 12th, at 11 a.m., which is 8 p.m. in Amsterdam, we're going to be joined by Dominic Sotis, the principal bass of the Concertgebouw Orchestra. And Wednesday, May 13th, all the way from Boston, Robin Bollinger from Far Cry. Thank you again to all of you for watching. Thank you to Caroline Shaw for her time and being such a great guest. And I will see you all tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific. Bye.